Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Moon Phases. Today, we are going to talk about the new moon in Scorpio, and it's a solar eclipse. I'm Lori Barnes. I am an astrologer, a psychotherapist, an essential oil user, and a moon lover. And I am bringing you another episode today so that you can prepare for the upcoming new moon. There's quite a lot going on at this new moon, and I'm going to talk about each of the things. The thing that I want to say at the beginning is that not everyone may be affected by the solar eclipse in the same way. I want to just mention to you that if you know your chart, then you're going to be able to see where it's happening and if it's touching something in your natal chart. And if you don't have your chart, there's free online calculators, or you can always make an appointment with me and we can look at your chart. And that's really the best way to know how impactful an eclipse is going to be in your chart. And of course, it's reflecting as above, so below. So when I say impacting, it's really like an activation, you could say. It is an indication that maybe something will appear for you that is significant around the eclipse or within 6 months' time, because sometimes things that are represented by an eclipse in your chart happen within the 6 months following the eclipse, not exactly at the same time. And it's even possible sometimes that the thing that is reflected by your chart having to do with the eclipse happens a little bit before the eclipse. So let me get you those details. And the new moon is coming up this week on Tuesday, October the 25th. And if you're in the US on the West Coast, it'll be in the morning early around 3:49 a.m. And on the East Coast, it'll be around 6:49 a.m. in the morning. And if you're in Rome, where I live, it'll be around noon. The degree will be 2 degrees Scorpio. So if you do have your chart, look at it and see if you have anything in your chart around 2 degrees Scorpio, like a planet, the sun, the moon, or the different points, the sensitive points in your chart. And if you do have something there, then whatever part of the chart Scorpio represents, then that's going to give you some more information as to where the eclipse may indicate a change. Eclipses usually mean that there's some big change or shift that happens in your life. But if you don't have anything near that point, that 2 degrees Scorpio, it could come and go, and maybe nothing significant happens. Eclipses always happen around the full moon or the new moon, and they always come in pairs. So this is the first of the eclipse pair, and then we'll have the second one coming up on November the 8th when we have the full moon in Taurus. So stay tuned for that one, and I'll talk about the eclipse for that date in the next moon episode. This is a new moon. The eclipse will happen at the time of the new moon, and it's in Scorpio. So let's talk a little bit about Scorpio. Scorpio is an intense sign. It's a sign that's about going deep into things. And if it's researching or reading or philosophizing or having a conversation, if you know Scorpios, they tend to want to go deep and don't really enjoy the shallow conversations. They like to talk about things of substance and perhaps have long, deep, intense conversations. And so that's the energy vibe of this new moon. Where it happens to be in your chart is going to give you more information, because we all have Scorpio somewhere in our chart. Even if we don't have like a planet or a point that's occupying Scorpio, it still represents a particular part of our chart. Now, going back to the eclipse thing I was talking about before, you can find Scorpio in your chart, and if there's nothing there, then there may be a less likely of a chance that you're going to see something significant come out of the eclipse. For the new moon in Scorpio, there are always other things going on in the sky. And so it's important to understand the new moon and then kind of like what else is going on at that new moon. So if we look simply at it as it's a Scorpio new moon, then we can say, well, Scorpio is a water sign and it's more of a receptive sign. So it would be a time of looking introspectively inside. It would be a time of going near water. There's going to be the planet Venus that's very much active at this new moon. So we can say that looking at things, taking into consideration your feminine side. Now, I don't mean that in the gender way where it's like woman, man, but we all have a feminine side. And when we say that, it's like your receptive side, your side that's about self-care and nurturing. Venus is at the exact degree as the sun and the moon in the new moon. If you're not aware, the new moon means that the sun and the moon are in the exact same place. That's the new moon. And the full moon is when they're exactly opposite of each other. So this is a new moon. The sun and the moon are at 2 degrees Scorpio, and Venus is also at 2 degrees Scorpio. So when we're talking about this particular new moon, we can't really talk about it without including Venus on this one, because Venus is right there with them. And it's kind of like finding this balance between your feminine side and your masculine side. Like how do you go about doing things externally, and then how you take care or nurture yourself internally. And Venus is right there, asking us to look at our feminine side. And in order to do that, we have to look at our whole self, right? Because we're not just half self, we're a whole self. So if we're in a Scorpio new moon, that's a water sign, and the receptive sign of Scorpio, and water and receptive signs tend to be more introspective, and now we have Venus there, then it is a really good time to take a nurturing and deep look into how well we're caring for that feminine, receptive, introspective side of ourselves, and to carve out some time under this new moon for self-care and for some well-being. It's even more important because there's another thing happening in the sky, and that is Mars is getting ready to go retrograde. It goes retrograde on the 30th, but we've been feeling this all month. It's been slowing down in preparation to go retrograde. And just like with Mercury retrograde, which I talk about 3 or 4 times a year because it happens 3 or 4 times a year, you may have already heard me talk about this pre-shadow and post-shadow. And the Mars retrograde has the same kind of thing going on, where before it actually goes retrograde, it has this pre-shadow period. And what is that? Well, when a planet goes retrograde in astrology, it is slowing down in speed, and then it stops moving forward and it starts going backwards by degree. Now, this is not what's actually happening in the sky, but it is what's happening astrologically speaking, and it has to do with us being on Earth and the way that we're orbiting up in the sky. And when we kind of like go in the circle and pass up faster or slower another moving object, like if you're on a train and a faster train passes you, it seems like you're going backwards, but you're not, you're just going slower, right? So it's all about perspective of how we are viewing the planets from Earth, and how in astrology we use the signs and the degrees to track where planets are in the sky. So in astrology, the planet Mars is going to be going backwards in the sign of Gemini. And right now it's going forward as I'm recording this for you, but on October 30th, it's going to go retrograde. And so it's going to get up to 25 degrees Gemini, and then it's going to stop and it's going to start going backwards. And it's going to go all the way back to 8 degrees in Gemini. This Mars retrograde will spend the entire retrograde in Gemini. And for the entire cycle, including the pre and post shadows, it's about 6 months. It's a pretty significant amount of time. Now, this is a new moon video, so I'm going to bring it back to the new moon. And I'll actually do another video on the Mars retrograde for you. With the new moon, we are feeling this Mars retrograde. So as we're talking about this water Scorpio sign, and with Venus there, with the sun and the moon, we have to acknowledge that Mars is over there getting ready to go retrograde. And that might be causing you and people that you know to feel like, what's going on? Like something's happening. And it can show up like just feeling tired, or having difficulty doing the normal daily routines that you do, and just not being able to do it as fast, or feeling more tired, or feeling like you just don't want to do it. That is something that we're going to go through, and then it's going to go retrograde, and things will just possibly slow down for you physically. Mars retrograde is a more physical type of retrograde, where Mercury is a more mental. So pulling that into the mix at this new moon, this one may not be a new moon where you feel like going out and doing something. It may be one where you want to stay home, where you want to do something very nurturing, very Venusian. pull up a bubble bath, something like that. Just preparing for this Mars retrograde, you will want to be aware that it's coming so that as you're slowing down or trying to understand what is going on with this energy in the sky, that's happening right now, and it will be in effect as we go into the new moon. It's like at the new moon, slow down, take it easy, take care of yourself, and the new moon energy will pass. The new moon happens every month, but the Mars retrograde energy is going to keep going. So please stay tuned for a video for me to go more into detail on the Mars retrograde. There is also another thing going on in the sky right now, and that is an air trine. And that air trine was happening at the last full moon, and I talked about it then as well. At this new moon, at the Scorpio new moon, it's a little more diffuse because the planets are starting to move away from each other, but it's still there. It's this really nice energy where Saturn and Mars and Mercury are all pretty close together in degrees, or close enough to say that they're in a trine, and in all the air signs. So we have Mercury's in Libra, and Mars is in Gemini, and Saturn is in Aquarius. So there's a nice, smooth, free-flowing exchange between those planets, between communication and between putting structure and discipline into whatever we're putting effort into in the moment, and then Mars, which is like our drive, like our physical, let's get things done. But remember, we just talked about Mars is getting ready to go retrograde, so it can be a little less momentum than you're used to, but there still is that nice train. So that's going on, and the solar eclipse is going on, and then Venus is hanging out with the sun and moon for the new moon. Makes for a very eclectic mix of energies. It's like there's different things going on that have a very different energetic vibe under this new moon. Now, new moons are about new beginnings. It's about starting new phases of things, taking something to the next level, kicking something off. All those are good things to do under a new moon. With Mars retrograde, if you are kicking something off or a new phase of a project, just build into that you might be a little more tired, or that one of the nice things that retrogrades do is help realign things, help figure out what is really important and what can be let go of. So with Mercury, there's a different focus than with Mars. So Mars having a more physical component to it, and it's in Gemini, which is a Mercury sign. So that's quite interesting. So it still does have a little bit of a mental component to it. I think this Mars retrograde is going to be a lot about cutting things out that we no longer need. So if you're starting a project at the new moon and you're focused on this beautiful alignment of Venus with the sun and the moon, and wanting to capture some of that beautiful energy by starting something at the new moon, keep in mind that in order to do what you want to do, you may have to really prioritize and prune. You may find that there's too many things on your plate, too much going on. And Scorpio is a great sign to really look into that and start analyzing it and realizing what is actually needed to bring what you want to do into fruition. And in order to do that, you may find that the best way to success is to really focus on that one thing and let go of all the other things, or focus on two things. Oftentimes we have more than one thing going in life, but if you have 10 things going on, you're trying to do 10 different projects and you're really struggling to get momentum on any of them, this new moon can signify a time where you do some introspective, deep analyzing of what it is that you want, of the 10 things, of the 5 things, of even the one thing, and you're not making movement, like really going deep into that. Like, what is it that I want to do? What is it that I really want to manifest? And what's stopping me from doing that? And let the Mars retrograde unfold and help you start letting go of some of those things. I like to think of this cycle as like if you're going down a path and you have like some sort of cape on, and on that cape is hanging a whole bunch of weights, and it's slowing you down. And if you could let go of some of those weights, release some of those things, and carry a lesser burden, like have less that you're carrying on your back, lighten your load, then you can move faster and easier. And so I think that this new moon is kicking off this Mars retrograde phase, or it's happening at the same time. So you can look at this new moon as whatever you're implementing, whatever new moon intentions you're doing, if you're starting something new or kicking off a new phase of a current project, to use the Mars retrograde energy to start pruning your time and pruning what's holding you back so that you can be more free to move forward. You're going to have this beautiful air trine supporting the communication and putting together the structure and plan to do it along with your Mercury, which is how you communicate, how you educate, you learn, you think, and the mental capacity behind what you're doing. So you got your Mars for your drive, which is going to help you prune. You have your Saturn to put it together with structure, and you have your Mercury to put that thinking, communication, analytical piece behind it. And then the Venus, Sun, Moon is just absolutely gorgeous. You could have a very romantic new moon, looking at just the Venus, Sun, Moon piece of it. You could have a massage. You could go to an art museum. If you do any kind of art, you could do it, paint, draw, dance, sing. Those are lovely things to do with this Venus energy hanging out with the Sun and Moon. Now, as you know, I'm an essential oil person, and I always like to give you some ideas for oils that you can use during this time period. And I have a few. The idea of overwhelm, which I maybe didn't talk that much about earlier, so I'll mention that now, that with this Mars retrograde energy, there can be a feeling of being overwhelmed because things are slowing down. But your work doesn't slow down, right? The things that are on your plate, that's not slowing down, but your energy level might slow down, and you may feel drained and tired and irritable. Essential oils can help with that. So that kind of overwhelm, to help balance the overwhelm, I'm going to suggest basil, clary sage, and wild orange. And as we're talking about wild orange, that's also good for the fatigue that can come from both your nervous system being overloaded and also just having that feeling of a lack of energy, of just not having the energy level that you're used to having. Also, to help ground any kind of nervous fatigue, you can use patchouli. And I did already mention basil, like if you're feeling drained. Now, for connecting to your feminine side, and remember, not so much gender, right? Because men, women, them, they, whatever gender you identify with, we all have a feminine side, our nurturing side, our introspective side. To help tap into that and really diffuse some oils while you're doing any kind of nurturing art, relaxation, meditation, I have some suggestions for you. Lavender, my favorite oil of all time. And if you don't have any essential oils and you're just kind of maybe going to embark on getting some, start with lavender. It's my number one oil. If you have no other, have some lavender. It's very calming and soothing. So that would be my first choice for working with the Scorpio new moon. And then if you have rose oil, or if you want to splurge and get a new oil, and I say splurge because rose essential oil is very expensive, but it is amazing. It's just has this amazing floral smell. I mean, you probably smelled roses before, so you know what it smells like. The essential oil is really much more intense, and it can be a wonderful oil to use. If you don't have the essential oil and you don't want to spend the money on it, you can find things like the rose water. You can find that at a lot of the health grocery stores, like the organic type of grocery stores. They usually carry rose water, or maybe you have a lotion or something with rose oil in it. But it's a wonderful scent, and I highly recommend using that at the new moon. Now for some ideas on what you can do at the new moon. I think that this is a more introspective new moon based on what I've said, and also you just might be more tired. And if you're tired, you definitely want to take it easy and do something really low key at home. Remember that this is a new moon, which means it's the beginning of the phase, and you want to be sure to do your intentions or any rituals that you do at the beginning of the phase. The times I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the video, so you'll know after that time is a good time to start. It's happening in the middle of the week, so it may be more difficult for you to do something on Tuesday, but if you could do something Tuesday evening, Wednesday, Thursday, or even over the weekend if you have to extend it, but it's best to do it the day of or the day after. That's what I would recommend. If you could do something really calm Tuesday or Wednesday, which really means try to just have nothing on your schedule those evenings and then do really self-care, nurturing type of things. I already mentioned draw a bubble bath. That would be a really nice way to ring in the new moon, make yourself a bath, put some of the oils I mentioned in there. If you have some rose oil, lavender oil, that would be really lovely. And if you live near water, you might want to take a stroll by the beach or by the lake or by the pond. That would be really nice. You want to set intentions to connect with your feminine side, intentions that help you find the balance. If you tend to live more on the active, kind of outgoing masculine side of things, and again, not about men or women, but it's more of like the metaphor of extrovert or introvert kind of things, then you might want to spend more time under the new moon, just really focusing on or setting intentions on how you can relate more to your feminine side over the next couple of weeks while we're under this new moon phase. If you find that you're already more of an introvert, if you're a nurturer, many times people are nurturers and they're giving, 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 taking care, then you may want to give yourself a break and try to, instead of focusing on caring for others and nurturing for others, is to do that for yourself. So for this new moon, I don't recommend a lot of different activities. I'm really recommending that you take it easy and you focus on yourself. You look within, you consider how well you're taking care of your needs. And, Scorpio is it's a deep sign. It's time to let yourself go deep and be truthful and honest with yourself about how well you're taking care of your feminine side. Actually, I'm titling this new moon cleansing your feminine side. That would be lovely if you did a metaphorical, a real bath, but like metaphorically speaking, that you set an intention that as you go into the body of water, that it's a cleansing and that it's cleansing your feminine side and putting some self-protection in there and some self-care and some self-nurturing and really kind of greasing the wheels of your nurturing side so that you can keep doing that. If you are a nurturer, then how sometimes you can find yourself just kind of taxed out and needing to replenish and cleanse. And so that's really a great thing to do under this new moon. Now, as you move through the 2 weeks after the new moon, then some things that you could do is to continue to do what I just mentioned, like self-care, replenishing yourself. Considering that Mars is going to go retrograde, you really want to watch your nervous system. You want to both do something physical to take care of any overwhelm or stress that you feel on your nervous system, but yet you don't want to overdo it. So if you already exercise, I'd say try to take it down a couple of notches, like do a less intensive workout or for a less amount of time. Other things you can do some deep journaling or vision boarding, because you have this lovely Venus, sun, moon, energetic vibe happening. So tap into that creativity. I would do vision boarding. If you don't like journaling, if you don't like writing, then do a visual one where you're finding images and words that are really attractive to you and glue them to a piece of paper. Enjoy that process. Another thing that I think is really important to do under this 2-week new moon phase is to start noticing what may be dragging you down. Do you have some weights on your back? Are you carrying some burdens that are keeping you from moving forward with what you want to do? And that's really metaphorically speaking. Most of the time, the things that are holding us back are perhaps too many things on our plate or a lack of confidence or belief that we can do what we want to do. So during this 2-week new moon Scorpio phase, analyze, go deep. Once you kind of peeled back a layer and have maybe an aha moment of like, oh, this is This is what is taking so much away from where I really want to go to the next layer. That's very Scorpionic style. It's like you keep peeling back the layers, discovering what's under there and going deeper and deeper. As you are hearing me, or I guess if you've listened to some of my previous videos, if we were talking about a fire or air sign, those tend to be way more active. And I have all these really fun ideas to go do this and go do that. I'm getting the vibe that this particular new moon is going to be less about a lot of active things out and about and more introspective for you. I think that there will be a lot of benefit if you do some introspective work, if you do some nurturing work, well, not work, because nurturing is not work, but nurture yourself and focus on your well-being, while at the same time trying to honestly look at what is holding you back and try to start releasing those things. You'll have the longer Mars retrograde period to do a lot more of that. This is the time to get started. I have some inspirational quotes for you. I love quotes. I have 3. The first one is, sometimes when you're overwhelmed by a situation, when you're in the darkest of darkness, that's when your priorities are reordered. And that's from Phoebe Snow. And I think that speaks a lot to what I talked about today. There's some reprioritizing that's probably going to happen under Mars retrograde. It will likely start by feeling overwhelmed or overly tired. Ultimately, it's the universe asking us to reorder, reprioritize, realign, rather than viewing it as this difficult, challenging time. Reframe it as an opportunity to lighten your load and be willing to lighten your load. Because if you're not, then it's going to be maybe hard to go through this cycle trying to carry everything on your back. This one is from Miranda Kerr, K-E-R-R. Don't know if I'm saying that right. And she says, just doing nothing and having those still moments is what really rejuvenates the body. Love that. That's what I think we should be doing under this Scorpio new moon. And the last one is from Timber Hawkeye, and it goes like this. You can't calm the storm, so stop trying. What you can do is calm yourself. The storm will pass. So I think that speaks a lot to what's going to come at us during the Mars retrograde. I think it's important to remember that we can't change the weather. We can only change our response to it. And I hope that you all take the time to slow down, to nurture yourself, and to enjoy this beautiful connection that Venus is going to have with the sun and moon coming up this Tuesday. We do have that solar eclipse coming, and I wanted to tell you where it's going to be visible in case you were wondering. If you're in the US, you're out of luck. Sorry to say that. But according to timeanddate.com, which is what I use to look at the eclipse, they say it's going to be visible in most of Europe. And I looked in Rome, Italy. We'll get just like a partial. We won't get to see the whole thing, but we can see some of it. And then in Northern Africa, in the Middle East, and Western parts of Asia. So if you live in any of those parts, you will be able to see the solar eclipse. All right, that's all I have for you today. I wanted to let you know that I am putting together a Mercury retrograde guide for 2023. And I will include, there will be a Venus retrograde in 2023, and then I'll throw in the information for Mars on that. So if you want to get all of the dates and information for 2023 on the retrogrades of Venus, Mars, and Mercury, please sign up for my email newsletter, and you will get that. You will get that free, but you have to be on my email newsletter in order to receive it. And you can sign up at my website, which is loribarnesastrology.com. And then the other thing I wanted to let you know is that there will be another Mercury retrograde coming towards the end of the year, and it's going to be at the same time as Mars. So that's going to be so interesting. I'm going to do a special video just on the Mars retrograde, and I'll talk about the Mercury retrograde in that. And hopefully I'll have that out for you next week. So stay tuned to the YouTube channel. And if you're interested in having a consultation with me, I do astrology coaching and I do individual consultations on astrology charts. So you can set up or schedule a consultation with me on my website at loribarnesastrology.com. So I do hope that you sign up, and I will see you next time. Happy Scorpio new moon.